to be creating an image similar to this, where we utilize text as a mask over the top of another image. So here we go. I'm going to go to the assignment for today's date. Go ahead and open this image. Open it in a new window. Which should allow us to download it. That looks like it's taking time, but you guys know how to download the images. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I have it downloaded already, so we're going to go ahead and open the image from our computer. You guys should have it in your downloads folder. Mine is on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and open that. So here's the John Lennon image. Now the first thing you want to do is protect the original image. So remember, Photoshop is destructive, and there are some things that we may do that might actually destroy the image. So in order to protect the original image, first thing I'm going to do is to make a copy of that layer. So if I click and drag that icon onto the new layer icon, which is the one to the left of the trash can, that will create a copy of that layer. As we learn to work with our layers, you'll notice that I like to name my layers to make sure that I know exactly what I'm working with. The other thing you want to notice, and it's protected, and that's fine, but this background layer has a lock on it, which means that there are certain things we cannot do to that layer, which is fine. We're going to leave that layer alone anyway. Notice that the current layer that I have selected is this lighter gray. It's always important to pay attention to this layer panel, because it's important to know which layer is selected and which layer is the one that you're working on. Alright, so the first thing that I want to do is to perform that look where it divides the photograph in half. So I've got my rectangular marquee. I'm going to use that to select basically right down the middle of his face over to the left here. There we go. Now, with the rectangular marquee tool still selected, if I use the arrow keys to bump this over, I can adjust where I am. So now I'm pretty much perfectly centered here. If you have the move tool selected, that is not what happens. You won't be bumping the selection over. You'll actually be moving the image. So it's important to pay attention to which tool you have selected. Alright, so I have half of the image selected, or half of his face selected. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and put a mask on it. Now it's going to look like I didn't do anything because there's actually the exact same image below it. But if you look, half of the image here, so we're going to go back to looking at the layers palette. We've added a layer mask, and this layer mask, which is this other rectangle here on the Lennon main layer, half of it's white, half of it's black. The black portion is see-through, the white portion is opaque. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. Also, you can tell that the mask is what's currently selected. So I can select either the image or I can select the mask, which becomes very important in some of our more complicated Photoshop work. So it's important to pay attention to what object is selected on the layer, not just which layer is selected. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and keep this layer mask selected. We're going to zoom out. And I'm going to hide this background image so you can see which half I've actually got showing and which half I've got hiding. And that was actually not the half that I wanted to hide, so we want the words to be over here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure again that the layer mask is selected, not the image. And I'm going to inverse this, so that's Command I will inverse the colors on the layer mask layer, which means whatever was white is now black, whatever was black is now white. So if again we look at that over here, we can see that I have inverted that, right? So Command I inverts and changes those colors. So by pressing that, Command I switch between which side is showing. So I want this right side showing, so make sure that's the way it is. I'm gonna go ahead and drag this down and duplicate it again. So now I've got 3 copies, and this time it's going to be Lennon text. And we'll come back to that later. So far these are exactly the same. We're just going to keep them separate for now, and I'm hiding that background layer. And we can use that at another time, and I probably will, in order to play with some of the colors in the background here. All right, so now we need the text. If you remember, that text was nice and bold and thick, which makes it easier to see the image through it. You don't want to pick anything that's a thin font. So we're actually going to go to a free font website. So I'm going to click here. It's called 1001 Free Fonts. I'm going to go there. We're going to pick a sans serif, so I'm going to click on that font category at the top there. And I happen to know that the font I'm looking for is about 3 levels deep, I believe. I could be a liar. Hold on, might be 2 levels deep. There we go, 2 levels deep. All right, so this is it right here. I want this Typographics by SharkShock. So I'm going to download it. Once the file downloads, if you have your downloads up here, you can click on typographics.zip to unzip it, or you can always go to your downloads folder. Sorry, my computer's lagging a little bit. So here's the downloads folder. And let's find the font. There's Typographics right there. Double click on it to expand the folder. And I'm looking for OTF, TTF, it's a font file. This other stuff, the PNG and then the TXT, those are just, that's an image file and that's a README text file. I want the actual font file. So I'm going to double click on this. And it's going to ask me if I want to install this once it's done validating. There we go. I'll install this. And I want to make sure I remember the name of the font as I go back to Photoshop. So I'm going back to Photoshop. I'm going to click on the type tool over here. Go ahead and click on the horizontal type tool. And I'm going to click and drag to make a text box, just to kind of make it easier. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of space away from his face there. Now it fills it with some text. And I believe the text was, "All you need is love, John Lennon, 19 something, I think 40 to 1970. I'm lying, I know. I'll open up my example again here and we can see it. 1940 to 1980. Rest in peace, 1940 to 1980. There we go. All you need is love. John Lennon. Rest in peace. '40 to 1980. All right, so I've got the text in there. The next thing that I want to do, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to click on the Move tool. The next thing that I want to do is make sure this is the right font and make sure it fills the space the way I want it to. Color's not going to matter right now because we're actually going to replace that color with the image below it. All right, so here we go. We've got the font, which again, remember I said typographics. Should be the name of it. There we go. Select it right there. And then I'm going to change the size. I'm just clicking and dragging on the T right here. So that changed the size of the font. Now I can change the spacing on the font. Currently it's set to auto. I'm going to drag backwards here. Give it a little bit of space. I believe it was right aligned. So we're coming to the paragraph. That should make it right aligned. My computer going slow again. There we go. If I click the type tool, I can adjust the size of this text box a little bit. Size of the type. Okay, and then the spacing again to get it to fit. And we're pretty good here. I'm missing some of the text down there. I'll let you play with that a little bit more to get it to all fit in. But here is the text. So we want to use this text with the image, and I'm actually going to drag that below the Lennon text image. So I now have 4 layers. I've got a background image, the Lennon main image, so that's the right half of the image, the text, and then the Lennon text image. Well, I'm going to click on that layer mask again, and this time, if you remember, I need that left half to be white, so we're going to invert that again. So I'm going to press Command I to invert that layer mask. Now it looks like his face is all there, and we've covered up the text. But we're going to do a special thing here. You're going to right click on this top layer, and we're going to create a clipping mask. So if you notice, what happened in here was this layer is now pointing to the layer below it. And if we zoom back out, you can see that that text is now only showing, or that image is now only showing where that text is. So you see how I didn't need to change the color of that text. And so we can continue to play with this, maybe choose a better font that fits this a little bit better. His eye was showing up better in the other image that we had. But we could then take this background image, which now makes it look like that text is not there. And I can actually add an adjustment layer here. let's do this with levels, and we are going to raise the levels so that he's kind of lightened there. So I have a levels layer that's modifying that background layer. It's non-destructively because it's an adjustment layer. That made it kind of ghosted in the back. And we've got the right half of the photo, full contrast. Then we've got the text layer. And then we've got this top John Lennon layer that is filling in that text. So just to explain what happened over here, when we used this layer, the text layer, as a clipping mask, what it did was it only allowed this image to show up where the text was. So that text is still blue. So if I hide that text, it's still blue. And if I only show that image where that text is, then the blue kind of disappears and the image takes the place of that blue. One last thing that I might do is play with the coloring. So I'm on, again, this top layer, Lennon text. And if I play with the color mixing, I can actually use the color beneath it to blend with the image. All right, so that is it for that lesson. It teaches you about layer masks, which allows us to show and hide things by turning part of the layer mask black and part white. We talked about clipping mask, which uses another layer as the mask, so I can use complex shapes as masks. And then we also talked about creating a levels adjustment layer, which allowed us to change what a layer looks like. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. We're going to go to File, Save. Since it was a JPEG when we opened it, it's now asking us to save it as a PSD, which is the layered file. That's good. We want to save that. Remember to pay attention to where you're saving it. I'm saving it on my desktop in this John Lennon Photoshop lesson folder. There's my PSD file. Okay, but that is not what I want to turn into Google Classroom at this point. I want to actually flatten this as a JPEG, so we're going to go ahead and save it one more time. I'm going to click Save a Copy this time. And now, again, paying attention to where I'm saving it, what I'm calling it, I'm going to change the format from Photoshop to JPEG. That is what I'm saving. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Good luck.